If you've watched my other RuneScape videos, you know that I've always preferred the more modern iteration of this awesome fantasy MMO over the old school version. I've already gone in depth with my reasoning behind loving RuneScape 3, and you can watch that video here. However, I don't just prefer RS3 because of things that game does right, but also because of things old school does wrong. Welcome back to my channel where we talk about and play video games. And today, I'll be explaining the top 5 things I hate about old school RuneScape. Before I jump in, this video is not meant to dissuade you from playing old school RuneScape. It is a great game that I still love to play. I just have personal issues with some of its mechanics that prevent me from enjoying it as much as RS3. Also, if you love old school, that's great. I get it. I'm trying to explain my viewpoint precisely because my opinion is not a commonly held one. Now that I've definitely circumvented any negative comments,
you're awful!
Let's get into my issues with old school RuneScape, starting with number 1. I'm starting with number 1 because this point is my main issue with the game, and all the other issues stem from this one. I'll get into actual numbers and data that support this idea in my other points, but in this point I want to focus on my definition of tedium in games and why I think it ruins the experience of old school RuneScape. A big argument I hear on why old school is the superior version is that it's more challenging. I'll agree that the smaller XP drops do make grinding more challenging, but it seems a lot of people confuse challenging for tedious. Just because something is tedious doesn't make it challenging.
Interesting. No, wait, the other thing. Tedious.
A challenge is something that tests your skill and ability with the game, like bossing in both versions of RuneScape. Gameplay becomes tedious when the developers take what should be a simple task and artificially stretch the time or energy it takes to do that task. Something being tedious does not make it challenging. A tedious task doesn't challenge my knowledge of the game or the skills I've developed from playing the game for a while. The only thing tedious tasks challenge is my patience. Some will say that is the challenge. RuneScape is a grindy game and you'll have to put several hours into it to reach max levels or complete all the quests. That's the case in old school as well as RuneScape 3, so doesn't that dismantle my entire argument? Well, no. Spending hours at the mines to level up your mining skill does take a lot of patience and endurance. But here's the difference. In that example, you're directly working on a goal. You're mining for hours, slowly getting better at that skill. A tedious task is something that shouldn't take that long, but the developers have artificially inflated the time and effort it takes to accomplish. Getting max level in mining should take hours. Walking around the map should not. And that takes me to number 2. Oh boy, this is one I've argued for a long time. This is going to be the longest point, so strap in. I absolutely hate the walking mechanic in old school. I always have. It's not a new opinion. It wasn't when RuneScape 3 added faster ways to get around that I thought, oh yeah, I like this much better. Even back when I was a kid and I first got into RuneScape, I kept running out of energy and thinking,
Stop! Please let me go! Please let me go first! I'm doing something!
I'll show the actual agility data in a bit, but first, walking in games sucks. Having the default movement speed be walking is an outdated gaming practice, and there's a reason we've stopped doing that. There's a reason modern games make the default speed jogging, and the faster movement that requires energy is sprinting. How many times do people complain about a game making them follow an NPC? Why do people complain about that? Because 9 times out of 10, the NPC walks much slower than the default movement speed of the player. Now imagine that, but the entire freaking game! I really don't know why people defend this mechanic so vehemently. It sucks, guys. Even Jagex realized it sucked. That's why they sped up the rate run energy replenishes in RS3, added a rest mechanic that replenishes your energy a little faster, and added musicians that will replenish your run energy even faster than that. In fact, let's look at agility, because it sucks in old school. At level 1, it takes 7.5 seconds to restore 1% of run energy. That means it takes 12 minutes and 35 seconds to go from 0 to 100 energy. That's a long time in-game. But of course, we have a lot of levels between 1 and 99. So what are the stats for max agility? Well, at 99 agility, it takes 2.4 seconds to restore 1% of run energy. That means it takes a total of 4 minutes to go from 0 to 100. Now granted, that cuts the restoration time by more than half, but 4 minutes of walking can still feel like an eternity when you're trying to cross the map. Well, what about Graceful? Full Graceful cuts down the restoration time to 1.875 seconds per 1% restored. This is a total restoration time of 3 minutes.
You're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Now, 3 minutes compared to 12 is still a big difference, but I think 3 minutes can still feel like an eternity of walking. This also doesn't take into consideration that your agility level has nothing to do with how fast your run energy depletes. According to the wiki, that is affected by the player's weight, the effects of stamina potions, and the passive effect of the Ring of Endurance. This means that at 99 agility, your run energy can deplete just as fast or faster than it did when you were at level 1. Why is this not all tied into agility? You're telling me I'm a master of agility, but my endurance won't improve until I wear a magic ring? Old School is just more realistic than RuneScape 3. Get out of here! Let's look at RuneScape 3. At level 1 agility, to get from 0 to 100 energy, it takes 1 minute and 15 seconds while walking, 35 seconds while resting, and 25 seconds while listening to a musician. That's at level 1! At max agility, to get from 0 to 100 energy, it takes 55 seconds while walking, 15 seconds while resting, and 15 seconds while listening to a musician. Your agility level also affects how fast your run energy depletes. Not by much, but at level 1 you can run for about 1 minute and 26 seconds, while 99 agility lets you run for 2 minutes before running out of energy. Even if you don't like the lodestone network and think it takes the fun out of exploration, which I can understand that argument, the movement system in RuneScape 3 would still be far less painful than Old School.
Wow, easy Scape. RS3 takes all of the challenge out of the game.
No, it's not a challenge. It's just, say it with me now,
Tedious.
I forgot to mention in my script that RuneScape 3 also includes abilities that are tied to the agility skill, such as Surge or Dive, that make movement even easier. So yeah, RuneScape's agility and movement system are just way, way better than Old School, and nobody can disagree with me because I am objectively right. I know, I can hear you typing furiously in the comments.
But Marcus, all you have to do is level up your magic skill, your rune crafting skill, your crafting skill, and make a good amount of GP to use magic teleports and amulets.
Here's the problem with that. I shouldn't be required as the player to level up certain skills or buy certain items to compensate for outdated game design. And let's be honest, it is outdated game design. There was no running at all in RuneScape Classic, and I think this comes down to map size. Look at this map. This was the entire map. Edgeville is called Ghost Town for Pete's sake, and there's no Drainer Village. The map quickly expanded to this one, which adds Asgarnia and Karumja. When you look at these maps, especially the first one, you can see why the default movement speed was walking. You could definitely walk around this map with no issues. Now take a look at modern day Old School's map. My god. Kourend alone is bigger than the original map, and that's just an island Jagex added within the last decade. This map is brutal to walk.
Marcus, they're not expecting you to walk. They're expecting you to buy an amulet that's—
Shut!
As someone who loves to kick back and relax in video games from time to time, I always appreciate having good AFK alternatives while training. Old School doesn't do a great job at this. Most AFK methods still involve a good amount of focus, or they require you to actively train another skill to get AFK XP for your desired skill. I know many of you are probably sick of me bringing up RuneScape 3 in this Old School video, but it's the perfect way to illustrate my point as they're both RuneScape. In RuneScape 3, you can sit at one mining node forever without moving and your character will keep getting ore. It's much slower and grants less XP, but you can definitely AFK with no issues. I often see players just sitting at the same node for hours, not moving from node to node, getting the XP boosts from the opportunities. The most you have to do is click on your ore box from time to time when your inventory starts to fill up. Agility can be trained at throne room bikes and Heffen pillars. Divination is naturally pretty AFK. Bonfires for fire making. Using bank presets for fletching and herblore is pretty AFK with very few clicks. Bones at an altar with a familiar that can carry more bones for prayer. Smithing now has an AFK method, and woodcutting is way more AFK with the wood boxes. Just look at the logout timers for both games as well. RuneScape 3 will log you out after you've been idle for up to 15 minutes, and Old School will log you out after you've been idle for 5 minutes. RuneLite can extend that logout timer, but Jagex limiting it to 5 shows how active they expect you to be in Old School RuneScape. Old School is generally a lot more hands-on, and while its AFK methods might take less energy than normal methods, to me, they're still pretty involved. I definitely can't go away from my keyboard.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
I know a lot of Old School RuneScape players probably already hate me by now, but this is the last thing that really grinds my gears about this game. I hate that you have to have every tool you need in your inventory or equipped on your body when you actually want to use it. I know for many this crosses the line from tedious to genuinely challenging, but I disagree. To me, RuneScape never felt like a game that required this mechanic. In a survival game, absolutely, you can only use what you have on you. You need to strategize and plan your trips into the wild to ensure you'll survive. RuneScape is not a survival game. It has plenty of challenges already that have nothing to do with inventory strategy. Now I will say, I really like the idea of making the inventory strategy thing a part of Hardcore Iron Man or Ultimate Iron Man. I think that's really cool. But just the base game? No, get rid of it. I hate that. Plus, the tool belt can't hold everything. It only holds your basic tools for most skills. This also allows you to be more casual in RuneScape 3 if you want. Just logged in and feel like mining? Go for it. Your pickaxe is on your tool belt. Want to go straight to smithing? Your hammer is on your tool belt. Want to go fishing? Your basic fishing gear is already on your tool belt. Obviously, there are things for each of these skills you can grab from your bank to help you be more efficient, but you don't need those things to participate in these skills. What if I just want to hang out in Gillinor and I don't want to be sweaty all the time? What if I don't care about min-maxing and I just want to chill by the lake fishing? RuneScape 3 allows that style of play more easily because of the tool belt. In Old School RuneScape, if you log in with nothing on you and you want to mine, you have to run to the bank, grab your pickaxe, run to the mine, run out of energy halfway and walk the rest of the way, get there 10 minutes later, get 27 ore if you can't wield your pickaxe, run back to the bank, run out of energy halfway again because it didn't fully regenerate, make it to the bank, deposit all your ore, and walk back to the mine. This is why you often see people just dropping their ore on the ground while they're training. Why waste precious training time walking back and forth? Then, if you want to smith all the ore you just got, grab 28 ore, or 14 of each if it requires 2 kinds of ore, run to the furnace, smelt the bars, run back to the bank, repeat until all of them are bars. Now, most furnaces in Old School RuneScape don't have an anvil near them, so find an anvil that's near a bank, grab your hammer, which you can't equip, grab 27 bars, run back to the anvil, make your items, take them back to the bank, replace them with more bars, repeat. Most Old School RuneScape players will just say, well yeah, that's the grind. RuneScape is about grind. Well, let's look at RuneScape 3. If you log in with nothing, you could go mining right away. Teleport to the nearest furnace, deposit all the ore into the ore bank, teleport back, repeat. You can go grab your ore box from the bank if you want, and that can hold 150 of each ore at max level. So you can grab 150 of every ore in the game except gold and silver before you deposit them into an ore bank. Once all of your ore is in the ore bank, you can smelt an inventory full, then deposit those bars right back into the resource bank and start again. Once they're all bars, most furnaces are right next to anvils now, and the anvils are connected to the same bank as the furnaces. That means you can go right over to the anvil and start making all those bars into items. The addition of the tool belt and the resource banks make it much easier in RuneScape 3 to just get to the fun part of the game and stay there longer. In old school, you spend most of your time running back and forth, and with the broken movement system, you'll most likely be walking most of that.
Hey, is sometimes taking things slower better? Yeah.
The last thing that really bugs me about old school is the very, very limited UI and keyboard shortcuts. Old school is, well, old school, so it has many outdated design decisions. An unadjustable UI is definitely one of them. You can only have one window open at a time, every window has to be the same size, and you can't adjust the way the UI looks.
That's kind of small.
Now to be fair, RS3 has definitely gone too far in the opposite direction. I love how the UI is so flexible, but there are far too many windows and absolutely no explanation in-game about all your options and how to adjust everything. You can even adjust the actual game window in-game and make it look more like fixed in old school, but I had to find that out through a YouTube video. So yes, RS3 didn't do this very well, but that doesn't mean a custom UI is entirely a bad idea. Imagine being able to have your inventory, prayer list, and magic spells on screen at the same time. That would make combat so much more fun. When I see higher level players flicking between windows at lightning speed, it's definitely impressive, but it feels more like they're fighting the UI than actually fighting the enemy. Again, making this change wouldn't take the challenge out of the game, it would just make combat far less tedious. Just don't go overboard like RS3, and maybe have a tutor in-game that can explain some of it and put the more advanced stuff on the old school forums. This is editing, Marcus. I had no idea at the time of writing this that the forums are dead. What? Oh my goodness, that's a huge thing and I had no idea. I mean, it makes sense because Discord exists and the wiki exists and all kinds of things exist, the subreddit exists, so it definitely makes sense, but it's the end of an era. It's definitely the end of an era. So you can't put it on the forums because those are gone. They have been Thanos'd out of existence. The new collection log will be resizable, so they're sneaking it in. They're dipping their little toes in the custom UI pool. Come on in, Jagex, the water's much, much better. There are definitely challenging aspects of old school, like soloing Wintertog or higher level skill training. Hopefully though, you see my point about unnecessary tedium. A wonderful gaming YouTuber, Josh Strife Hayes, has said before that adversity in games is good because it makes your experience in the game more memorable. I definitely agree. Running rooftop agility courses for hours, collecting marks of grace make achieving max agility memorable. Taking 15 minutes to get to the next agility course to continue your agility grind is not fun or memorable. All the grinds I've done in RuneScape 3 have been memorable and fulfilling, and I was able to train for much longer and it didn't take nearly as long to get to the next location. While comparing mining in both versions of the game, my friend New Guy said on my Discord, almost all the time you spend mining is useful for your account. You almost never drop what you mine and are able to decide exactly how efficient you want to be all the way through. Perfectly said. Like I said at the beginning, I don't want to dissuade anyone from playing the game. If these things don't bother you, or if you disagree with me and enjoy the tedium, that's great. After all, when I jumped into RuneScape in 2005, it was basically just like old school, and I'm still playing almost 20 years later. The core of what makes RuneScape great is there, and I will always enjoy old school. I just happen to think that the quality of life improvements Jagex made over the years make RuneScape 3 a much more enjoyable game. I'm definitely not giving up on old school, but if Jagex changes these things, old school might be tied with or even surpass RuneScape 3 in my eyes. To be fair, if you'd like me to make a video where I talk about 5 things I hate in RuneScape 3, I can definitely do that, because there are definitely things in RuneScape 3 that I hate. So let me know if you want to see that in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you disagree, leave a dislike and let me know in the comments why you disagree. I also want to let you guys know I now have a second channel called Marcus Plays. This new channel will be exclusively dedicated to longer videos of me playing through games for the first time. If that's something you're interested in, head over there, subscribe, and check out my playthroughs of Portal 1 and 2. If you want to see more in-depth videos about your favorite games, subscribe to this channel. Thanks everyone, and until next time, have fun playing video games. Bye everybody!